I clenched my jaw, my hands curling into fists. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was about a lifetime of being second place. I sat in the quiet of our bedroom that night, staring at old photo albums. I hadn't opened them in years. Page after page, I saw the same pattern. My sister at the center of every family event. Smiling, surrounded by love and attention. Me, always just slightly to the side. Present, but never the priority. I remembered birthdays where she got the bigger party. The brand new bike when I got my sister's old one. The way our parents beamed with pride at her dance recitals, but barely acknowledged when I made honor roll. And now Christmas was just one more reminder of where I stood. Or rather, where I didn't. I shut the album and exhaled shakily. I had spent years making excuses for them, telling myself it wasn't intentional. That maybe I was imagining it. But I wasn't imagining it. And I wasn't going to pretend anymore. The next morning, I sat Mia and Lucas down at the kitchen table. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Lucas asked, frowning. I took a deep breath. "I just wanted to talk to you both about something important. About family." Mia's eyes widened. "Are we in trouble?" I smiled softly. "No, sweetheart. But I want to talk about something I learned a little too late in life." They both sat up straighter, listening. Family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about the people who show up for you. The people who make you feel loved, not just when it's convenient for them, but always. Lucas tilted his head. "Like you and Daddy." "Exactly," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his little hand. Mia bit her lip. "Is this about Grandma and Grandpa?" I hesitated, but then I nodded. "Yes, it is." They exchanged a glance. They were young but not oblivious. They had noticed things, even if they hadn't fully understood them. Lucas poked at his cereal. "They didn't come for Christmas." Mia frowned. "And they didn't get us anything." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "They love you," I said carefully, because I would never tell my kids otherwise. But sometimes people don't know how to show love the right way. And when people keep hurting you on purpose, you have to decide if you still want them in your life. Lucas frowned. "Like when someone is mean at school and doesn't stop." "Yes," I said, my heart aching. "Just like that." Mia was quiet for a long moment. Then, finally, she asked, "So, are we still seeing them?" I looked between my children, feeling the full weight of my decision. "No, sweetheart, we're not." Mia's eyes filled with tears. Not because she missed them, but because she understood. And then, to my surprise, she nodded. "Okay." Lucas looked relieved. "Can we make pancakes now?" I let out a watery laugh. "Yes, baby, we can make pancakes." As they scrambled off their chairs, giggling about toppings, I felt something inside me shift. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to fix something that was never mine to fix. I wasn't chasing approval that was never meant for me. I was breaking the cycle. And that? That was the best Christmas gift I could have ever given my children. It had been 2 weeks since I blocked my parents. 2 weeks of silence. 2 weeks of peace. And then the letters started coming. The first one arrived in an envelope with my mother's handwriting. My stomach twisted the moment I saw it. I should have thrown it away. But curiosity, or maybe old habits, made me open it. "Daisy, sweetheart." It began. I stopped there, already feeling the anger rising in my chest. "Sweetheart." That's how she started this. After what they had done. After choosing my sister over me? Over my kids? I forced myself to keep reading. "I don't understand why you're doing this. We are family. Families have disagreements, but they always come back together. We never meant to hurt you. You're overreacting." Overreacting. That word again. I clenched my jaw and kept going. "We thought you understood that things have been hard financially. We didn't have enough to do a big Christmas for everyone, so we did what we could. Your sister has been struggling too, you know. She needed our help. Why are you punishing us for that?" I let out a short laugh. "So that was their excuse?" That they had to choose because they didn't have enough for everyone? They had money for a luxury Christmas for my nieces, but nothing for my kids? I had spent years giving them the benefit of the doubt. Not anymore. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the trash. 3 days later, I got a text. This time it was from my aunt, my mom's older sister. I hesitated before opening it. "Hey Daisy, I just had a long talk with your mom. She's really upset. She's been crying over this whole thing. She doesn't understand why you're being so harsh. You know how much she loves you, right?" I rolled my eyes. There it was. The classic guilt trip. When they couldn't bully me into compliance, they tried shaming me into forgiveness. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I stared at the message, letting the weight of it sink in. My mom had been crying? Where were those tears when my kids sat by a small tree, unwrapping cheap gifts, believing their grandparents couldn't afford more? Where was that heartbreak when my sister's kids were showing off their designer sneakers and brand new electronics? Where was her sadness when I found out, through a social media post, that my own parents had celebrated Christmas without us? They weren't crying for me. They were crying because they had lost control of me. Because for the first time in my life, I was refusing to be the daughter who swallowed her feelings just to keep the peace. I took a deep breath and finally typed my response. She's not upset because she hurt me. She's upset because I finally stood up for myself. And if you can't understand that, then maybe you should stop being her messenger. I hit send. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The final attempt came through an old friend of my mother's, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a Facebook message. "Daisy, I just wanted to reach out. Your mom is devastated. She doesn't know how things got so bad between you. She asked me to tell you she loves you. She's heartbroken over what's happened. I know you're upset, but can't you just talk to her? Life is too short for this kind of grudge." I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. They still didn't get it. This wasn't a grudge. This was a boundary. A decision to stop chasing people who made it clear I wasn't a priority. And yet they refused to acknowledge what they had done. There was no apology. No taking responsibility. Just more manipulation. This time I responded with only one sentence. "If she's heartbroken, it's only because she finally got treated the way she treated me." That night, David found me sitting on the couch, my phone face down beside me. "More messages?" he guessed. I nodded. "More guilt trips?" "Yep." The text arrived while I was folding the laundry. "Hey sweetie, just a heads up. Christmas is going to be simple this year. Money's tight, so we won't be doing big gifts. Just the essentials." I stared at the message, my fingers tightening around the fabric in my hands. I wasn't surprised. My parents had always been practical about Christmas. They never splurged, never went overboard. But this year, something about the message felt off. It wasn't just that they were coming back. It was the finality of it. Like a decision had already been made. Without me. Still, there was a smile. The kids will understand. Because what else can I say? My husband and I did exactly the same thing. But we always made Christmas special. And Lucas. We saved throughout the year, picked out thoughtful gifts, wrapped them with care. Even if it wasn't extravagant, it was magical. But I swallowed my disappointment and let it go. After all, family isn't about gifts. It's about being together. That's what I told myself. That's what I believed. Until the photos popped up on my screen. It was 2 days after Christmas, a lazy afternoon. The kids were playing with their new toys, my husband was fixing a leaky faucet, and I was scrolling through social media. Just passing the time. And then I saw it. Best Christmas ever. My sister's caption was plastered over a carousel of photos. The first image was my parents' living room, but transformed. A massive tree twinkling with white lights, its branches weighed down by shiny gold and red ornaments. A mountain of gifts spilled onto the floor, wrapped in elegant silver and gold paper. My nieces, my sister's two girls, sat in the center of it all, tearing into expensive, brand-name presents. Designer sneakers, high-end electronics, and what looked like a brand-new tablet in my youngest niece's hands. I froze, my heart pounding. We hadn't been invited. No one had mentioned a family Christmas gathering. For us, Christmas had been quiet. Just my husband, the twins, and me, eating a simple dinner at home, exchanging modest gifts, and watching Christmas movies on the couch. No grandparents, no cousins, no big celebration. Because apparently we weren't part of the family this year. I scrolled through the photos again, hoping I had misunderstood. Maybe this was from last year? Maybe they'd reused an old post? But no, the timestamp was clear. This had happened this Christmas. I checked my messages. Nothing from my mom. Nothing from my dad. No invite, no mention. I swallowed hard. Had they even thought about Mia and Lucas while they watched my nieces unwrap hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars in gifts? Had they even cared? I felt sick. I didn't want to assume the worst. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe. But deep down, I already knew the truth. They had lied to me. Not just about the money. Not just about the gifts. They had lied about what we meant to them. I wasn't angry at my nieces. They were just kids. I wasn't even angry at my sister. I had long accepted that she had always been my parents' favorite. But my parents, the people who raised me, the ones who told me that Christmas wasn't about gifts, that family mattered most, had deliberately excluded us from something that should have been for all of us. And the worst part? They had let my children believe that Christmas had to be small and simple because there was no other choice. Yet, for my sister's kids, Christmas had been grand and extravagant. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, without hesitation, I went to my contacts. I blocked their numbers. Not in anger. Not in pettiness. But because sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. And this year, my Christmas gift to myself was peace. Blocking their numbers should have felt like closure. Instead, it felt like an open wound. The days after Christmas passed in a blur. I went through the motions. Cooking, cleaning, playing with Mia and Lucas. But I felt hollow. The betrayal sat in my chest, heavy like a stone I couldn't swallow. My husband, David, noticed. "You okay?" he asked one evening as we put the kids to bed. His voice was careful. Knowing. I hesitated. "Yeah. Just tired." I lied. Pressing a kiss to Mia's forehead before shutting off the light. He didn't push. But I saw the way he watched me. The way his brow furrowed when he caught me staring off into space. Because how do you say out loud my own parents don't care about me? How do you admit that you weren't just left out? You were discarded? I expected them to try to contact me. But nothing happened. The silence stretched for days. At first, I thought my mom would at least try. Some excuse. Some last-minute explanation to soften the blow. But there was nothing. Then my sister's name popped up on my screen. I let the phone ring. Then it rang again. And again. Until finally a text came through. "I saw that you blocked Mom and Dad. What is wrong with you?" Not "I'm sorry." Not "we should talk." Not even an ounce of guilt or understanding. Just accusation. I stared at the message, my pulse hammering in my ears. What was wrong with me? David found me sitting on the edge of our bed, gripping my phone like it might break in my hands. They didn't even try to deny it. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He sat beside me. "They knew what they were doing, Daisy. And they don't care that it hurt you." I exhaled shakily. I keep trying to tell myself that maybe I misunderstood. Maybe they had a reason. David shook his head. "Stop. Stop making excuses for them. They made a choice." I swallowed, feeling the familiar sting of tears behind my eyes. He was right. They had chosen my sister. Chosen her kids. Chosen to lie to me. To let my children believe that Christmas had to be small and simple. while somewhere else they were celebrating with a tree full of gifts and laughter. That wasn't an accident. That was deliberate. That was a decision. The next day, I finally responded to my sister's message. They told me they couldn't afford Christmas gifts for the kids this year, but they could afford a full celebration for yours. They could afford luxury gifts, expensive decorations, a party. But they couldn't afford to even invite us? Explain that to me. Her response came almost instantly. It's not a big deal, Daisy. Mom and Dad just wanted to do something nice for the girls. You're overreacting. Overreacting. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was how they saw me. Less than. The afterthought. The child who didn't matter as much. And for the first time in my life, I stopped pretending otherwise. I stared at my sister's message for a long time before typing my final response. I hope your daughters had a great Christmas. Mine had to settle for small and simple because that's what Mom and Dad told me we could afford. And now I know where I stand in this family. So do me a favor. Don't contact me again. I hit send. Then I deleted the thread. And finally, I blocked her too. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I was done. Done begging for scraps of love. Done pretending that I mattered. Done waiting for my parents to treat me like family when they had made it clear. I wasn't. I put my phone down. Exhaled deeply. And for the first time since Christmas, I felt lighter. The weight of their rejection was still there. But now? Now I wasn't holding on to it. For the first time in my life, my phone was silent. No messages from my parents. No passive-aggressive texts from my sister. No guilt-tripping calls trying to smooth things over without actually addressing what they had done. Just silence. And it should have been a relief. But in the days that followed, I found myself reaching for my phone out of habit. A part of was hoping my mom to come over to say, "Sweetheart, this is just a misunderstanding." I wanted my dad to step in and say, "We never meant to hurt you." But that didn't happen. Because the truth was, they had meant to do exactly what they did. And they didn't regret it. I should have expected the gossip. It started small. A mutual friend casually mentioned that my sister had been venting about me. Then another reached out saying, "Hey, is everything okay with your family? Your mom seems upset." Upset? She was upset? She had cut me out of Christmas and given my sister's kids everything while letting mine believe there was nothing to give. And now she was upset? I ignored the messages. But then David came home from work one evening, his face tight. "Your dad called me." I stiffened. "What?" He said he's worried about you. That you're acting irrationally by cutting off the family. I let out a short, humorless laugh. So I'm the irrational one? Not the people who lied to me and excluded my children from Christmas? David shook his head. I told him you were done being treated like you don't matter. And you know what he said? I crossed my arms, bracing myself. You don't cut off family no matter what. I felt a slow, burning anger rise in my chest. No matter what, I repeated. Even if family lies? Even if they show favoritism? Even if they hurt you? David nodded grimly. It's the same thing they've always done. Expecting you to take whatever scraps they give while they prioritize your sister. He sat down beside me, watching me closely. You okay? I thought about it for a moment. And then, to my surprise, I realized. I was. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for my parents to care. I wasn't desperate for their approval. I wasn't grasping at the hope that one day they'd treat me the way I had always treated them. I was done. And that felt like freedom. David took my hand, giving it a squeeze. Good. And just like that, I knew. This was what real love felt like. 2 months passed. 2 months without a word from my parents, my sister, or anyone else carrying their guilt-laced messages. 2 months of peace. Of dinners with my husband and kids. Of laughter around the table. Of weekends spent making memories without the shadow of family obligation hanging over me. At first, it felt strange, like something was missing. But then I realized what I was feeling wasn't loss. It was relief. But just when I thought I had fully stepped away from the family that had chosen to discard me, something happened that forced me to redefine what family really meant. It was late February when my phone buzzed with a message from my Aunt Linda, my dad's younger sister. I hesitated before opening it. Linda had always been different from the rest of the family. She wasn't part of the drama, wasn't tangled up in my parents' games. She had always been kind, but we had never been close. Her message was simple. "Hey Daisy, I know things have been rough with your parents. I just wanted you to know that I see you. And if you and the kids ever want to come over for dinner, my door is always open." I stared at the screen, my heart tightening. There was no guilt trip. No attempt to manipulate me into going back. Just an offer. An invitation. Not an expectation. I thought about it for a long time before replying. That would be really nice. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something unexpected. Hope. The following weekend, David and I packed the kids into the car and drove to Linda's house. It wasn't a mansion like my parents' home, but it was warm, filled with the smell of home-cooked food and the sound of laughter. Linda greeted us at the door, her face lighting up. "You made it." She bent down, smiling at Mia and Lucas. "You two must be freezing. Come inside, I made hot chocolate." The kids instantly adored her. As they settled in with their drinks, Linda led me into the kitchen. "I know you don't want to talk about it," she said gently. "But I just want you to know I don't agree with what they did to you." Tears pricked my eyes. "They don't even think they did anything wrong." Linda sighed. "Of course they don't. That's how they are. They expect everyone to cater to them, to forgive them without accountability." I nodded, swallowing hard. "They didn't just do it to me. They did it to my kids." Her eyes softened. "And that's why you're doing the right thing. Protecting your kids from people who only love conditionally? That's the best decision you could ever make." I took a shaky breath. "Then why does it still hurt?" "Because you're a good person, Daisy. And good people always hope for better. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is accept that they won't change. And stop waiting for them to." I looked around at her cozy kitchen, at the way she had welcomed my family with open arms. And I realized, maybe I hadn't lost family. Maybe I had just found the ones who actually deserved to be called that. The evening was everything I had once hoped to have with my own parents. Linda's husband played board games with Mia and Lucas, laughing as they made up their own rules. Dinner was filled with conversation that felt easy, not forced. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove my worth. Linda didn't see me as the backup daughter, the one who had to accept whatever scraps of attention were left over. She saw me as family and treated me like it. As we drove home that night, I glanced in the rearview mirror at my kids, fast asleep in the back seat. David reached over and squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I smiled softly. "Yeah, I think I am. Because maybe family wasn't about blood. Maybe it was about who showed up. Who loved you without conditions. Who made space for you without making you beg for it." Spring came quickly, washing away the cold remnants of winter. With it came something else. Clarity. I no longer woke up expecting a call from my parents. I no longer hesitated before checking my messages, bracing for another attempt at guilt or manipulation. I no longer cared if they would ever understand why I walked away. Because I finally understood it myself. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure. I had already given it to myself. It had been 4 months since Christmas when my mother finally found a way to contact me again. A letter. Another one. David was the one who picked it up from the mailbox, holding it up between 2 fingers like it might bite. "Do you want to read it?" I took a deep breath, staring at my mother's handwriting on the envelope. Then, without hesitation, I dropped it in the trash. David raised an eyebrow. "That easy?" I smiled and meant it. "Yeah, it is." For years, I told myself that family was forever. that no matter how many times my parents chose my sister over me, no matter how many times I was treated like an afterthought, I had to hold on. Because that's just how family is. But I had finally learned the truth. Family isn't about DNA. It's about the people who make you feel loved, safe, and seen. And my parents? They had spent a lifetime proving that they weren't those people. Easter weekend rolled around, and for the first time, I felt no obligation to reach out to my parents. Instead, we spent the day at Aunt Linda's house. The kids ran around the backyard searching for Easter eggs, while Linda and I sat on the porch, drinking coffee and watching them play. "This is nice," Linda said, "having family around." I smiled. "Yeah, it is." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "I know it's not the same, Daisy. I know you probably still miss them in some ways." I thought about that. Did I miss them? Or did I miss the idea of them? The parents I had wanted them to be rather than the ones they actually were? I took a deep breath, letting the warm breeze carry away the weight that had once sat so heavy on my chest. "No," I said honestly. "I don't." And for the first time, I knew it was true. That night, I did something I hadn't done since Christmas. I scrolled through old photos of my parents, my sister, the life I had once tried so hard to hold on to. And then, one by one, I deleted them. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But because I didn't need them anymore. I was done looking back. I was done wondering if I had made the right decision. I was done giving love to people who refused to return it. I put my phone down, exhaled deeply, and closed my eyes. I had let go. The next morning, as I was packing the kids' lunches, Mia suddenly asked, "Mommy, will we ever see Grandma and Grandpa again?" I paused, looking down at her little face, so full of innocence, so unaware of the weight behind that question. "I don't know, baby," I said honestly. Lucas tilted his head. "Do you miss them?" I thought about that. Did I? No, I said softly. I miss what I thought we had. But I love what we have now even more. Mia nodded, as if she understood in the simple, wise way that children often do. And just like that, it was enough. Months turned into a year. And in that time, I built something better than the family I had lost. I built a life filled with love, honesty, and respect. I built new traditions with the people who showed up for me. And most importantly, I stopped waiting for love from people who had already shown me they weren't willing to give it. Because the best revenge wasn't anger or bitterness. It was happiness. And I had finally found it.